Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. Here in the middle of June, I cannot believe we are already kind of beginning the early days of summer here, but we've got a bunch of big wrestling topics, a couple of huge shows coming up in 2 weeks, followed by a lot of bigger shows towards the end of the summer, but we will kick things off, of course, as always, at Juicy Steen on Twitter, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, on YouTube at Juicy Steen. Listen to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen on Spotify, Amazon Music, juicysteen.podbean.com, Apple Podcasts, as always, also on YouTube. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find the Juice Box. So, with a lot of wrestling going on, and, only so many hours in the day, it has been, kind of difficult to keep track with everything going on. We haven't had No Dirt, Just Dialogue in a couple of weeks. I was on the Wrestle Collective a week and a half ago. My work balance, my shoot job is pretty busy at the moment, with a lot of things changing where I work. Additionally, I will be on the Apron Bump, recording it at least later this week, which will be fun. That'll be, we're talking a little WCW Sold Out 1998. But kind of busy throughout this early part of June. It's also the summertime, so, things are happening. People are out doing what they got to do. Kind of a downtime, I would say, in the large scope for pro wrestling, but as we'll talk about today, there is definitely some interesting news and notes coming forth. So we're going to talk a little AEW, we're going to talk a little WWE, including the Forbidden Door card for AEW, what we've got cooking with Night of Champions, as well as a huge WWE Championship match in a couple of weeks on free TV. And then we're going to close the show with a little sentimentality as we discuss a show that took place 30 years ago this past week that changed my wrestling fandom forever. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little AEW. We've got Forbidden Door coming up June 28th from San Jose, California, at the SAP Center, with Stardom, AEW, New Japan, and Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre, aka CMLL. But I don't know if I've ever actually seen it fully pronounced like that. We've got a few matches in regards to this particular show, and it is Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland in the Owen Hart Cup final, with the winner getting the AEW World Title shot at All in Wembley. I think it's pretty clear, and it has been for a while, that Will Ospreay, at least challenging for the AEW World Title at Wembley Stadium has been the plan, has been the thought, has been the idea. Will it come to fruition? We will find out at Forbidden Door. I say Will Ospreay is going to take that. Who knows if he'll win it at Wembley? I would still say he does. And who knows who he faces, because that's still up in the air as well. We'll talk about the world champion and what he's got going on this show as well. Because to me, I think it's supposed to be... not supposed to be, but I've seen a lot of people suggest MJF should be the one to take on Will Ospreay if Will Ospreay is going to win the title at All In. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But I have been under the impression that Kenny Omega will somehow, some way, regain the AEW World Title, and then defend it at All in Wembley against Will Ospreay, which would be one hell of a match, as they probably would have their final one-on-one encounter before Omega eventually hangs it up. Not like he's doing it now, but sooner rather than later, I think Kenny Omega will take some time away from pro wrestling, as it were. He's had some health issues, but he's stuck through it, and he's just always been reliable regardless, and kind of fighting through it all. So I do think that getting him and Ospreay in a dream world title match at Wembley Stadium is something that him, Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Tony Khan, all those guys kind of want to make happen. So that's where I stand with the world title picture at large of where Wembley factors in. And with the AEW pay-per-view coming up in July, which I believe Redemption is the title of that new pay-per-view, that could be where Kenny Omega gets his championship back. But we'll see. He will be taking on Zack Sabre Jr. in a straight-up singles match on this pay-per-view, Forbidden Door, which should be one hell of a in-ring contest. Looking forward to that. The Women's Owen Hart Cup final is yet to be completed. We have the semifinals taking place this Wednesday night. Mercedes Moné taking on Hazuki. And we also have Athena taking on Maya World. I think we're going to come down to Mercedes Moné and Athena come Forbidden Door, where I think Mercedes Moné will probably end up winning that match and getting a chance at Tekla for her AEW Women's World Title. Tekla is defending that championship against Starlight Kid, who is currently in Stardom, former Wonder of Stardom champion. So that should be also a quality match. And then this was announced. This was a interesting match that they announced. Do we know if MJF is truly hurt here? We don't know if he is, he's capable of working, but he's going to be in this bizarre 6-on-6 steel cage match. It was rumored and kind of seen that MJF may have hurt his, I want to say it was his knee. I'm not sure if it was during an AEW match or one of his appearances on the independent scene in a match. But if that was the case, either way, he needs to maybe get back to where he needs to be before we get to Redemption or what he's going to do at All in Wembley. But as champion, he's not going to defend the title on this show, but it's a steel cage match. MJF, Kevin Knight, and 4 other men taking on Mark Briscoe and 5 other men in a 6-on-6 steel cage match. Now, this is going to be an interesting way of doing business. I don't know if it is because MJF is hurt and this is kind of a way to have him wrestle but kind of be in the background, not be the forefront of attention. We'll see. But again, I still think MJF's ultimate destiny is not to defend that AEW title at Wembley. I think it's going to be him losing the championship before he gets to Wembley. Whether that's directly to Kenny Omega or not. But a lot of intrigue, a lot of interesting pieces moving around in the world of AEW. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Forbidden Door card continues to grow this week and next as we move further and further into June. So that's what we've got cooking with AEW. Nothing else that I have really picked up on over the last week and a half or so that has been going on with AEW that I am here to note. The rumor of Mick Foley potentially wrestling one more match seemingly has been confirmed, where if possible, I think Foley would love to have that last match in AEW if he were to get cleared, and I have a feeling he will get cleared. Could Mick Foley interfere in this cage match, or maybe be a part of this cage match, and then actually get a legit one-on-one match with an MJF at All in Wembley or something of that nature? Who knows? But that seems to be where everything is falling into place, with Mick Foley potentially getting one final match in All Elite Wrestling. But yeah, a lot of moving parts as we move forth into June, already almost halfway through June as of this recording. Let's talk about some outside the ring WWE notes before we talk about WWE in large scale. There, of course, were rumors of CM Punk. Where the hell is he? What is going on? Apparently, the bridges were never burnt or won't be burnt, and he, never say never in regards to could Punk ever show back up in AEW. I'm not going to say he won't, but I would be shocked if he did. That being said, I also firmly believe we're going to see CM Punk reemerge probably to start the month of July, whether that is just in a interference in a match or to set up some program. I think he's going to make his return sooner rather than later to WWE. And in that, we're going to really find out what's going on, where he stands for SummerSlam, because, he's an integral part. I really think he's going to be someone that has a large piece of business come SummerSlam in Minneapolis on August 1st or on August 2nd. So, yeah, we seeing the rumors, seeing all these things happening, I just don't believe he's going to go to AEW anytime soon. I don't think he's out of WWE anytime soon. The rumors, I think, are very unsubstantiated, and just the insanity we saw over the last week of unverified reports from nameless, faceless accounts purporting these rumors is just stupid and ridiculous and quite honestly pathetic. It seems like there's people that have agendas that don't like CM Punk for one reason or another, and I can pretty much guess why. But either way, it doesn't mean that you should be doing what those people did and purport these rumors that are clearly unsubstantiated. And I don't know. It's just, you want to get clicks, you want to get the buzz going, but when nothing happens and you look like an idiot, I don't really know what to tell you. So CM Punk seemingly is in WWE to stay, and I cannot wait to see what he's got cooking as it pertains to SummerSlam in Minneapolis. We have also got some other news. This is a twofold piece of business here, where Saturday night's main event, actually three-pronged. Let's talk about this. We have Night of Champions, of course, coming up in a couple of weeks, June 27th. July 18th is Saturday night's main event, and this is going to take place at Madison Square Garden. This is going to be the night before the FIFA World Cup final at MetLife Stadium the following day. This also is going to be interesting because, as most sports fans will know, and I'm sure WWE will promote this, the New York Knicks won the NBA championship for the first time since 1973, and Danhausen was, dare I say, an integral part of the outside shenanigans involved with such, as he uncursed the Knicks, and it turned out to be beneficial, where the Knicks actually won the NBA championship the other night. And I think you could very well see Danhausen not only get a major spot potentially at the parade for the Knicks upcoming on Thursday, but I very much could see Danhausen in a pivotal role, whether that is hosting Saturday night's main event in Madison Square Garden or just having a prominent role or segment due to that and it being an MSG. So that being said, the next Saturday night's main event is actually taking place on Sunday, September 6th, Labor Day weekend, Labor Day Sunday, for Sunday night's main event from Atlanta, Georgia. This was an interesting announcement. It's the first Sunday night's main event. This is the date that Money in the Bank was supposed to be taking place in for WWE, the Money in the Bank show taking place in New Orleans, which, New Orleans was supposed to get WrestleMania 42. That didn't happen. Then Money in the Bank was scheduled to be there in New Orleans, and it was supposed to be August 29th, 2026. That got pushed back to September 6th on Labor Day Sunday, and then it just got pushed back again October 10th for Money in the Bank in New Orleans. So now we will get a Sunday night's main event on Labor Day weekend, and we get a Saturday night in October for Money in the Bank, which I find fascinating. I feel for New Orleans and everybody that wanted to go to WrestleMania again, and then it got pushed back separately, 2 separate times, where Money in the Bank was in August, September, and now it's in October. But I also do love the October Money in the Bank. I 2 months away from Royal Rumble, and Royal Rumble is going to be probably in the United States next year. So there's a lot of intrigue of, whoever wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, if they don't cash in by Royal Rumble, that could play heavily into that PLE. We also, WrestleMania is the other key factor, where 6 months after Money in the Bank is WrestleMania instead of almost a year. So now you get just an insane potential where the Money in the Bank briefcase holder could go into WrestleMania knowing that they're going to cash in, could state they're going to cash in, could wait around for a match of big, importance to cash in. So October is going to be a fascinating time to have Money in the Bank. It really brings some intrigue into what normally is a downtime for WWE, that October, that fall time where, football starts becoming more prevalent, and it's just kind of like nothing going on. But we shall see. I really am interested to see how Money in the Bank plays in the fall this year. But additionally, next Friday, we have one-on-one for the World Heavyweight, the WWE Championship. It's going to be none other than Cody Rhodes defending against Gunther for the title at, the controversial win at Clash in Italy where Gunther's foot was under the rope. But this is a rematch, and the special guest referee is none other than Sami Zayn. So that is going to be very interesting. Will Cody lose the title? Could Gunther win the championship and Obafemi win King of the Ring? There's a lot of moving pieces involved there. And I don't know. I really don't know if Cody's going to walk out as WWE champion. I have a feeling that those are not in the plans. However, I could see where Sami Zayn costs Gunther, and Sami, gets his moment as well at some point. There's just so many weird parts to this that, and let's transition into Night of Champions as we do this. But King and Queen of the Ring coming up June 27th. Winners of both of those tournaments get a World Championship shot at SummerSlam. And again, it is just, is it Obafemi's tournament to win? Does Oba get, interfered with, or does he get cost his opportunity by Brock Lesnar, whether in the semis, and have Dominic Mysterio not only advance to the finals of King of the Ring, but be able to say he beat Obafemi, even if it's by way of Brock Lesnar? I think that is absolutely on the table. Or does Obafemi go all the way to King of the Ring and potentially get his chance ruined there by Brock Lesnar to set up that third match for SummerSlam in Minneapolis? Or does Obafemi win King of the Ring, Gunther takes the WWE Championship, and we get Oba versus Gunther on night 1 for the WWE title, and on night 2, we get Obafemi defending the WWE Championship against Brock Lesnar. I think a lot of different paths could be followed here, but I'll talk about a third. what if at Night of Champions, it turns out to be Jey Uso that wins King of the Ring, goes to SummerSlam, and either takes on Gunther or takes on Cody Rhodes, or maybe a triple threat. Jey Uso wins that championship, Roman retains his championship, and then you have Jey Uso's as WWE champion, Roman Reigns as World Heavyweight Champion, Jacob Fatu having to be in the middle of all of that, with both titles seemingly in the bloodline. I just think that is a very interesting dynamic to play as well. I'm not going to say that it's obvious or anything of that nature, but it just seems like there's a lot of opportunity, intrigue. Who deserves this type of thing more? Who's going to get the rub more? Where is Oba going? Does Gunther have to win the world title here? Does Oba have to win King of the Ring? When does Brock Lesnar factor back into this? There's so much going on, and it makes it very interesting this time of year for pro wrestling, where you got you got Night of Champions on Saturday afternoon. Winners of those tournaments get a world title shot at SummerSlam, and then the next day at Forbidden Door, the winners of the Owen Hart Cup get world title opportunities at All in Wembley. Yeah, they're similar, but yes, they're intriguing. We'll have 4 winners over the course of those 2 days to set up our huge shows for the end of the summer, and I cannot wait to see what happens and how that comes to fruition across the board. Additionally to King and Queen of the Ring, Trick Williams will take on either Carmelo Hayes or Ricky Saints for the United States title. I would also not rule out a potential triple threat match between the 3. So a lot going on across the board currently in professional wrestling. But as we close out the podcast today, episode 218, we're going to do a little This Week in Pro Wrestling History. And damn it, this is arguably the biggest for ya boy. June 10th, 1996. Wheeling, West Virginia, at the Wheeling Civic Center. World Championship Wrestling presented Monday Nitro. This was the beginning of the 83-week win for the ratings for WCW. This had the return of Kevin Nash to WCW at the end of the show by saying, look at the adjective, play. We ain't here to play. The measuring stick just changed around here, pal, and you're looking at it. And the first 2 pieces of what would be the 3 pieces for the NWO's creation came to fruition at this show. But maybe most importantly, at least personally to me, this was the first pro wrestling show I ever got to witness live. I was the tender age of 3 years and 5 months old, and I was there with my mom, my dad, my aunts, 2 of my aunts, my dad's sisters, and this was a show that I don't remember, but I have since gone back and rewatched it. They have aired this show on the WCW Vault. They did that. On this past week, they put up this whole episode of Nitro on the WCW Vault channel, which was awesome. And whenever they first cut in the show, you get to see Larry Zbyszko, Tony Schiavone running down the card for that night of action. And to the back left, you can see both my Aunt Melissa, my Aunt Jen, and you can see my dad holding me up in frame of the camera. You can even catch me waving a little bit there, which is pretty cute. And then, as soon as we get to the Squire Dave Taylor versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan match, when Jim Duggan's coming down to the ring, the camera cuts to my dad holding me, and I'm holding a little American flag, waving it for Jim Duggan. And it's funny, I'm recording this on Flag Day, so that's also kind of interesting how that all worked out. But it's the first time I was ever, featured on programming for pro wrestling. I know that my YouTube sign was kind of prevalent during Royal Rumble 2014, and I, briefly seen here and there on other shows, Ring of Honor and WrestleMania 33, but this is the first wrestling show I ever went to, and I think that without this show, I'm not sure I would ever be a fan of pro wrestling as much as I am now, especially because it's it's a cool story. I can go back and watch it. I'm on TV for a brief moment. I'm with my dad, who kind of got me into wrestling, and I always talk about wrestling still with him to this day, and I kind of have done so much with pro wrestling ever since I was introduced to it, watching it all the time. And then, creating pro wrestling videos throughout the years over the last 20 years. So, backyard wrestling DVDs, wrestling figure federation stuff. So leading, into interviews and being a part of Chair Shot Reality, and now the Juice Box and No Dirt, and just the stuff I've been able to do over the last 20 years. I don't, doesn't really start without the first 3 years of my life where I get to be going to a show like WCW Nitro, and it turned out to be a very historic show. I do have the Mattel Monday Night War Kevin Nash figure depicting this appearance where, we ain't here to play. So love that. This is 30 years. It's pretty crazy to see and say that. The rest of the card, Scott Steiner defeated Booker T, which was a couple years before they would have more singles pro wrestling matches, as they were both split from tag teams towards 98. DDP defeated Jim Powers. Sting defeated Meng. Jim Duggan defeated Squire Dave Taylor. The Giant defeated Scott Norton to retain the WCW World title. Lord Steven Regal defeated a young Billy Kidman. The Public Enemy defeated the Nasty Boys by disqualification. And then Lex Luger and Sting defeated the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson and Ric Flair, by DQ to retain the WCW World Tag Team titles. Just a fun show to go back and revisit. Like I said, without that show, without me being at that show, who knows, where I would be as a wrestling fan, or if you'd even be listening to me today. I know that I also, my parents watched Nitro all the time. We were a Nitro family. We'd watch Nitro, tape Raw, and without watching wrestling on Monday nights during the wrestling's second major boom, the first being in the late 80s and then the second being in the mid to late 90s, I was hooked, and I never looked back. And I'm very thrilled that my dad took me and included me and gave me opportunity to like something like professional wrestling, a very niche entertainment thing, but I ended up loving it. I still love it, probably more than I ever have, and I'm thankful for him and my mom and my aunts for going along too. Getting a whole family gathering out there, I'm sure it meant a lot to me, and having me around was pretty cool for them as well. So to go back and look at it, it's just crazy. But 30 years ago this past week. So I wanted to share that with you guys here on the Juice Box this week. I know this episode came in very late, but real life work getting in the way, and life getting in the way, and it's just summertime, so it's just gonna be a little busier throughout the year. It's more toned down and more available for me to get things in my routine and my schedule as the year progresses into the fall. That's kind of where my bread and butter is for me, and trying to schedule this podcast and most of my podcast appearances. But keep an eye out for the apron bump featuring yours truly for Sold Out 98. Sooner rather than later. I'm recording it here soon, but it'll be out in the future. And as always, follow me on Twitter at Juicy Steen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, at Juicy Steen on YouTube. Listen to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, juicysteen.podbean.com. And I think I mentioned YouTube, but I'll mention it again if I didn't. If you do listen to the show on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts via iTunes, leave a rating and review. It helps the Juice Box grow. So, next week we'll get back to it. Hopefully the episode releases a little earlier than the main weekend. I like to get them out on Friday, but this one came out a little later. But it is what it is. So looking forward to this week as the last week before we get to the go-home shows for 2 major shows in the end of June. But we got a world title match, a WWE Championship match this Friday night. Gunther, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn as the special referee. Cannot wait to see what unfolds there. And we'll have a lot to talk about with that and much, much more next week for another edition of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.